Well, how's it going? I'm Mark Duffy, welcome to my channel. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking to you all things lighting and how to maximize your budget-friendly setup. So what do I mean about maximizing your budget-friendly setup? We all know that we have budgets, unless you're like Peter McKinnon, where you can afford to splurge on massively expensive lighting setups. Me, personally, I'd rather spend it on a good lens. So I'm going to show you a few tricks that I've learned on the way to maximize a small setup to make it look like a much bigger and expensive setup. Like take for instance, this little trick here. Oh yeah, turning 2 lights into 4. Okay, I know for a lot of you, you're going to be thinking this is quite an overkill setup. But to be honest, I actually use quite a similar setup when I'm doing my headshot photography. Maybe not what's going on over here on the left, but definitely what I'm doing with the reflector. Before we can actually talk about and break down what I'm doing right now with the lights, we need to understand the different terminologies and what each thing actually is doing. So I've no doubt a lot of you already heard a couple of these phrases before and terminologies, like a 3-point lighting. So what a 3-point lighting basically means is 3 lights, and you've got a key light, you've got a fill light, and you've got a kicker. For me, I don't have any here, so we'll just call it a kicker. A key light is your main light source. Basically, the brightest light that's hitting you right now is your key light. That's the one that's going to really light your subject up. That's the one you're going to be focused on the most. And basically, it's what determines all the rest of the lights in my eyes. A fill light then does exactly what it says on the tin. It fills in the light. So the key light is going to cast light on parts of your subject's face, but cast shadows. And the fill light is then going to fill in them shadows to make them less dramatic, or in some cases make it more dramatic if you use the right type of fill. And then what a hair light and kicker does, it just lifts your subject off the background. So right now you can see that light shining right across my face here in the shadow part of my face. You can see this light, and it's just giving me my head definition. So if you didn't think my head had enough definition, I've added a little bit more definition with a kicker. In addition to your 3-point lighting, you also have the option for a feature light, as I call it, or a background light, and that's exactly what I have right here behind me. I have a light with a blue gel facing on the wall just to add a little bit of colour and just to pop off them acoustic panels to make a feature out of them, just to make something different and not so plain. And that's the only reason why you have it, hence why it's an option. So it's not critical to have it. You can totally have a great lighting setup and not have a need for a background feature light. So let's talk about the lighting setup I have currently here. I'm using a 2-light setup with a background light. The background light is doing exactly as I explained already. It's just adding some features to the background. Then I have a key light and I have a kicker. Yet I have all of this extra light coming up below me and coming from the side of me. How am I getting all this extra light across my face? So the trick really is that I'm using different surfaces right now to bounce light and manipulate it and get the most out. There's a lot of light comes from my key light and it just goes everywhere, and I have treated the light in such a way that I have it quite focused, but even at that, there is light that is going to go across my face. Because you want it soft, it's a big light source. So a lot of it's actually just going to spill and just disappear into the background, and with your exposure actually gets disappeared and unused. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to take some of that extra light, some of that wasted light that's not being used from our exposure, I'm going to bounce it right back at me so we can maximize the kind of light that's hitting me, and for some shots make it a little bit more flattering and really top end stuff. It's really simple and it's really cheap. 2 things I love. And how I'm doing this right now is I'm using a white card on my left hand side and I'm using a reflector right in front of me. And if you don't believe me, it's right here. I'm just using a white card and a reflector. That's it. That's the magic behind this whole thing. So I've turned 2 lights technically into 4. Let's take all this apart and reassemble it, and that means you'll get a full understanding of how this lighting setup is, and then I'll discuss some other lighting options that you could really look into to give you a better understanding of lighting. Once you understand lighting and how to manipulate it and take advantage of it, then the world is your oyster and you can experiment in so many other ways, because this practice runs across so many others. So this is a prime example of what the key light is actually there for and what it's actually doing. In this whole example as well, I'm not going to change the exposure as we do this. The exposure settings are staying exactly the same throughout, so you can see exactly what each thing is doing as I add it back into the situation. So I've turned off the kicker, I've turned off the background light, and I've removed all the bounce cards. And you will see as well from the back angle that it really is quite a dark situation. Now, In order for you to see this light in the camera, I added an extra light that's not affecting this exposure here, but it's just so you can actually see. If I was to actually go and turn that light off right now, you see you actually can't really see anything at all. So I literally just have that light on over there so you can actually see the key light, so you can understand what's kind of going on in my studio setup. Now that we understand what the key light's doing, let's add in the kicker, because I know for a lot of you, this could be it. This could be all you need to know, and this is where you're going to be happy with. Okay, so now I really only have the two lights on. I have my key light on and I have my kicker. And this is dramatic. This is really dramatic. So now we can see what the kicker is actually doing, and for this kind of lighting setup, what it is actually for. So we can see here from the key light, it's shaping my head on one side, the kicker is coming in and filling in the rest. It's also popping my shoulder off the background. So really and truly, if you wanted a true hair light, you would set it up above and straight across, and you'd light both of my shoulders, both my head and all that there. I don't really like that. I'm not too sure if I'd want that. As a bald person, you know, I would just look like a disco ball. So I think on the one side, for me, I'm happy enough, but you can just put it across. I also don't have another stand to actually put it across where you wouldn't see it. So we're just going to leave it there. Try it yourself, put it across the way. It could be nice. Right, now it's time to add in the background light and see what that was doing. So now we can really see the difference between without and with a background light. But as I say, it's really only a feature light. So if you don't need it, if you don't have the money for it, or you don't even have it, then don't use it. But if you want to really pop your images off, add some color, because contrast is two things. That's contrast, bright and dark. Another contrast is color. So that's where the background light can really come into play and add a lot of depth to your visuals. Okay, so now I've added in the fill card, so you can see the difference between when I had a high contrast on my face and now this is quite a low contrast on my face, a little bit more even, a lot more corporate if you want to think it that way. Now you can have a second light, there's nothing stopping you with having a second light, but a card this size costs about €2. How much does a fill light cost? So if you really want something cheap, and you can hang it any which way you want, I'll leave all the links for the gear I used in the description below. One of these on a light stand, and I wouldn't even use an expensive light stand or a heavy duty light stand, a cheap one, a cheap tenner. So maybe €20 for the clamp and the light stand, another €2 for a card. So what's that, €22, maybe €25 we'll call it. Are you going to get a decent fill light for €25? I don't think so. So this is a really, really good budget-friendly option, and it's used everywhere. Everywhere uses this, so don't be afraid of doing stuff that's budget-friendly and stuff like that there. Who cares? It's all about the end product. It doesn't matter how you get there with it. And now to add in the magic sauce. Reflector time. Oh yeah. Suck up the sun, baby. Soak up the sun. It does actually remind me every time I'm looking at this. Do you remember the videos you'd see of women in the 50s and 60s sunbathing with the aluminium or the tinfoil trifolding cards, and you can still get them trifolding cards for photography as well. This is a big ass 38-inch 5-in-1 reflector. It has black on that side, it has a reflector, there's gold, there's white, and then there's a diffusion panel on the inside. So really cheap. Love this. So if ever there's something you need to get for your photography, you definitely should have one of these. You even look at the reflections here. Boom, even more light, even more light, even more light. You could use this as a much stronger fill if you needed to as well. So this is really great. And as you can see as well, I could hold this with one hand and I could just do all my talking bits with the other hand, just going, yeah, I'm on YouTube and this is what I'm doing, because on YouTube we all use our hands. But then I'd have to switch when I want to change to the left hand, like video here. So I actually got this set with the reflector arm as well. It's just easier when you do headshot photography. It's very distracting for someone who's never held one of these to be handed one of these and then told, hold this in this position, because if you hold it like this, it's not working. If you hold it like this, it's too strong. Now I can see it in the camera, now I can't see it in the camera. And then you're trying to get them to do a pose where they're standing, they don't really like the way they're standing, they have to turn their head and they hold it like this. It's a mess. So put it on a stand and don't have them think about it, have them think about what you're telling them to do. Turn, tilt, look at me, winner. Especially, like, for instance, take a look at this in the video. I don't have it affecting me. Now I do, one-handed. Look at that, boom, in, and then out, and in, and then out, and then in, and then out. It's great. So look, get the I'll put the link in the description below for the one with the arm. You can decide whether or not you want to get it that way, but I would highly suggest it. Now, I will tell you this, the stand is terrible. It's a pile of crap, but it's handy. Okay, it's just it comes in very handy. Okay, now that you have a kind of understanding as to what way I use the lights for this, let's talk about now the gear I used, why I used what I'm actually using, and then I'm going to show you a couple of options for different lighting setups. I'm just going to show you different lighting positions just so you have a bit more of an understanding of other possibilities that you could actually utilize. For the key light, I'm using my absolute favorite. It's the budget-friendly version of the Aperture 120D. It's half the power, but it's only about 1/10 the price. It's the Godox SL 60 watt, as I call it, or you can call it the Godox SL 60W, because as far as I know, the W stands for white and not actually the power. This is a 60 watt LED video light, and it's an absolute beast of a unit. I absolutely love it. It has a bones mount at the front, so you can put on different modifiers. I have currently a Luxlight 38-inch octabox with a grid on it. Now, the reason why I'm using the grid is there was a lot of light being cast to the background. So what the grid does is it puts the light into tunnel vision, and it leaves less light to cast out the sides and really just focuses it. And because of that focus, it actually only hits your subject and then dissipates really quickly, so then you can really have a dark background image. And that's one trick to do. Give a bit of distance off the background, a gridded light, and you will turn a white walled into maybe not black, but definitely a grey. And that's really, that'll open up some options for you. For the kicker side of things, I am using the Yongnuo YN360S. So this is the baby brother to the YN360 RGB. What I love about this is it's daylight balanced only, and the CRI rating on this is so good that these are made by two separate companies, yet they pretty much match. And that's the whole point. If you're looking at any video lights, make sure you look at the CRI rating, and you're looking around 90 to 95 to 100%. You're never going to get 100%, but if you can get 95% or around that, jobs are good. And similar enough to when you're looking for a monitor for your computer, you want an accurate Adobe RGB rating. Again, up around the 90s is great because it's for color rendition. This again is for color rendition. It's white. You will find that some lights will have it, and you'll see it on the background one. There's a green tint. That is actually a CFL bulb, and there was a slight green tint. I noticed it on the back of the screen when I was setting this up, and that just goes to show the difference between this LED and the CFL bulb. So it really is important, if you're going with different companies, to try and get ones that are color accurate. This was just, I got the Yongnuo for something else, for photographing behind the scenes at nighttime when I'm doing long exposures for my cameras, for my own photography, and then just copped that it suits really well with this Godox system. The great thing about the light is it works with both these kind of batteries, these big, chunky, heavy units, but great for going portable, or like me in the studio right now, I have it plugged into the wall, so I have it on a 12-volt transformer, and it works great. So if I want to do, like right now, if I wanted to do 4 hours of recording, I don't have to worry about battery time or anything like that there, but it does have a long battery life. And just to give you a reference for power, I'm only using 8% power on the kicker. I'm using 100% power on the SL 60 watt, so there is a lot of power potential out of this light. That's now at 100%. And I'm just looking at my monitor. It has blown the side of my face off. Then on the background, I'm using possibly the most expensive light I own, which is the Spiffy Gear Specular. And I will do a separate video for this because it deserves it. It is a really versatile light and it deserves its own video. So I will do a video on its own all about that, because it is a fantastically bright light, and that's not the purpose you should be using it for, and I don't think Spiffy Gear will be too impressed either. Okay, right now I'm going to show you some options for positioning your lights, and just to give you some idea as to placement of lights and the effect you're going to get. Okay, for position 1, you're going to see that I have the light right over to my right hand side. It's called side lighting. I would like to call it split lighting, as it splits my face in half. Very, very dramatic light scene. If it's too dramatic for you, put in a bounce card and fill in some of that light. For my tastes, don't particularly like it unless if there was a need for it in a concept I had. The reason why I started with the side lighting is because the very next lighting setup is what I was using, which is the Rembrandt lighting, and how that is worked out is on a 45-degree axis. So let me set up the light first, show you what the Rembrandt is again, and then I'll show you how I got there. Okay, this is without a shadow of doubt the most popular lighting setup that you can use. It's the Rembrandt lighting, and how you know it is from the iconic triangle in the eye. It's caused by having your light source come 45 degrees from your subject. So how do you work that out? So we just did the side lighting where the lighting was right here on the right hand side of me, directly this way, and your camera is that way there. So if the light is coming from the right and the camera is in front, that would be 90 degrees from your camera. So to get 45 degrees, you simply just move the light halfway between the side of your subject and your camera, which is just there, and lift it up enough and then tilt it down again 45 degrees. If I'm totally honest, I only did this setup because of the video. I don't actually like this kind of setup. I like the light a little bit lower and tilt it a little bit up to light this left eye a little bit more. It's either way, it's quite in shadow. Not the biggest fan of that, and I would actually move the light in a little bit more. So how I light it, usually myself, is actually at a 30-30. So 30 degrees and 30 degrees, kind of. It adds a little bit more light to the face, and I'll show you that right now. So this is Rembrandt lighting, and this is my Rembrandt hybrid, if you want to call it. A little bit lower, a little bit more facing the subject, and it fills in this area a lot more. So if you bring in a bounce card to it then as well, it's really even. So if you want to consider that, that is about 30 degrees and then 30 degrees as well. But don't really take too much into that. Just, you know, it's all about how it looks on the person's face. So have a look at the person's face, and even on your phone, have a reference photo and then just try and copy it. And if you have too much shadow in the eye sockets, like if they're kind of looking like a raccoon, lower the light, and if it's too face on, higher the light and tilt it. Okay, and for our last option, this is a typical fashion photographers type setup where they have the light above and then they bring in the reflector below for what's known as the clamshell lighting. You'll notice on my eyes, my eye sockets are in shadow, and it's known as raccoon eyes. So I look like basically a tired raccoon right now. So when you have your lighting a little bit too high, bring in a reflector or lower that light. The reflector, this kind of setup, the reason why it's known as clamshell lighting is because of the catch eyes. You've got a circle above and a circle below, and it's quite distinctive, and it's a well used lighting setup for fashion, but they don't use usually a softbox like this here. They would use a beauty dish. The beauty dish is a little bit more harsh, which gives more definite lines across the cheeks and under the chin. So the model is really slimmed and profiled out of this photo, but it's still nice with a softbox. I have yet to use this kind of lighting setup, but I would consider it for shooting headshots with female subjects, because there are different ways to light a male subject over a female subject. So that's just a few examples on how I exploit lighting to maximize my budget-friendly setup. Hope you like that. Hope you got something from it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you're enjoying what I'm actually producing lately. Check me out on Instagram. I do a weekly Q&A on my stories on a Tuesday called Duffer's Tuesday Tips. Check that out. Get your questions in for that. And until the next time, later, Gators.